human editors. Now, we leverage a ton of AI tools to accelerate it. But at the end of the day, I always say design and what we do is subjective, and subjective is always going to need a human touch. So there's a lot of hype around AI replacing editors and filmmakers and all of this stuff. And I think it's going to accelerate things. But I think who we are as people is you're not going to let technology tell you what looks great.
We have Amer Tadayon on the pod today. So, Amer, you broke the mold. So everyone says you can't come out of corporate America and, jump into entrepreneurship. It's a really difficult transition to make, but you've done it 5 times now. So you started your career in corporate America. You've built 5 companies. You have a couple successful exits under your belt. You're on your 5th company now. So let's just dive in and unpack all that. I'm really excited to hear more about it.
Let's do it. Yeah. Yeah, I guess you could say I broke the mold. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's just to kind of, I guess just to kind of on that thread there, just say a little bit about where you started your career, and then we'll spend most of the pod talking about the companies you built.
Yeah, so I actually thought I was going to be an aeronautical engineer, and that kind of ended really quickly. I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and studied aeronautical engineering. I was minoring in computer science, and my advisor said, you've failed so many classes at this point. You're going to be here for 8 years or you're going to get kicked out of school. So find another major. And I went into information systems, and part of that program was human factors, which I really enjoyed. And so that's what I studied, but I was putting myself through college. So I actually had a software sales job, and I was in sales, but I was studying information systems and human factors. And it worked out great being in the Bay Area and working for software companies, because as a salesperson, you actually know what you're selling, So that's where it started. And I worked, I was a marketing rep at Apple while I was in college. And then I was an intern at IBM programming. And then I got a full-time job doing international business development at IBM for a while. And then I left and started the first company, which was a pretty big disaster and probably one of my biggest learning lessons. But that's how it started.
What did that first company do?
It was so I have a twin brother actually who was in the supplement space, and back then, a website was really expensive, and so what we did was we built this platform where natural products companies and pharmacies could spin up a website literally within minutes. We had 3,000 SKUs that were being fulfilled by a distributor in Arizona. They could pick their SKUs to represent on their website. Our catch was the way you would have access to this platform is you had to buy a certain number of dollars of our private label for your store. So we were literally using the internet to get shelf space. It was really a unique model actually. And it was a win-win because they would buy our product and they would get, 80% margins on that. We would get our margins, and they got this website where we also got paid on. So it was fun. It was a really cool idea. And then, the crash happened and we crashed along with it. So
I was going to say that sounds like a good business model to me, especially back in that time, but it was the bust that took you guys down.
Yeah. We couldn't raise our second round and just crash and burn, man. It was a great product too. It was a really, really cool product. We were like getting shelf space like you wouldn't believe with that industry. So
I mean, the battle scars are so important, I think, for entrepreneurs to, those battle scars are what make you who you are today, I'm sure.
Well, I think that you do one of two things. Either you realize you just can't do it and you move on and you go back into, corporate America, or you say, okay, let me see if I can do this again and not relive the same lessons, right? And that's the hard part, I think, is to remember the mistakes you made and not apply them a second or a third or a fourth time. For me, I had to learn the same mistake a few times and then finally not apply it.
I mean, so few companies that, were founded before, tech companies that were founded before, say like 99 or 2000 are still around today. Obviously, Amazon's like the biggest one, but there's so few, I think, I don't know too many.
Well, I mean, I lived in the Bay Area, after that whole disaster happened, you'd go down and you'd see these buildings like Exodus and some of these other buildings that were just towers, right? That used to house thousands of employees that were just empty. So
Well, it's kind of like that again now, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't had an office in almost a decade. The last company I had, which I sold 6 weeks before the pandemic, was an agency, and we were global from the ground up. Like we never really had an office until one of our clients complained about not having an office, and we got an office for her, and that's the sole reason we had an office. But it was, you don't realize like your ability to have a larger talent pool grows exponentially when you don't confine people to a building. A lot of arguments against, hey, what about collaboration? What about all of that? But, you know, P2K Labs was the company I had, and we had about 20 employees literally across the globe. And even this current company, my first 3 employees were in the US, but, the next 7 were in other parts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, we do. I think I told you about Curotech, my agency, and we're a little under 100 people, and we do the same thing. We've been, global and remote since 2010. So back then, we used to get a lot of crap for it. In the early days, people would really, be a little flaked out by the fact that we have like international people and we have all these, remote workers. But now it's like expected in the agency world.
Well, you were way ahead of your time, right? 2010. I mean, I started the last one in 2015, and I actually had some employees who just came to me and said, "I can't do this because I can't separate my personal life and business, and I'll work from 7 a.m. all the way to 10 p.m." And so they were at least honest about it. But a lot of people really appreciated the flexibility, and we had a couple of rules, and we still do. One of them is you've got to be available a certain number of hours, but there's really a flexibility in the way we work and the way we have people work for us, and I think that pays huge dividends for us as a company.
Yeah, 100%. So what was your second company? What did you do after the .com bust?
I got a job. I went back into corporate America for working for an object database company, and then I left again to, believe it or not, start a digital production company. I'd done a commercial when we had the supplement company. I really enjoyed the whole production process, and so I was kind of bored in tech. I said I want to do something else, and I want to start this digital production company when everybody was just transferring. So tape was still the thing, and digital cameras were just coming out. Prior to, I think it was Panasonic had the HVX, which was like the first low cost digital camera, and at low cost about $6,000. But before that, you'd have to get a Varicam at about $50,000 or an F900, which was even more. So my whole shtick was going to be, I was going to be a digital production house and just do HD and digital, and it actually paid off because we were doing some spec spots, and a producer came in and saw this camera and, "Are you shooting in HD?" And basically had us quote a project for a very large brand that was going to be on the Jumbotron. And we priced it out, and I went to him and I said, this is what the budget needs to be. He goes, "We have, half that." And I said, "Well, that's why you're not getting any bids for this. Your budget for this is below what it's going to cost." But I took the project. I took it at a loss. I think I lost 8 or 10,000 on that project, but a month later, we had 3 spots on the Jumbotron, and the business took off because of it.
Wow.
So the way I looked at it is, okay, I'm going to make an $8,000 marketing investment, right? We lost money on the project. It ended up on the Jumbotron. It was a major brand, and the business took off after that.
So you were telling me last time we talked that one of your first big customers was MTV in the early days.
Yeah. That was the same company. So I had the agency. We were doing all this production, and we really wanted to do our own content. I really wanted to do my own ideas. And so one of the directors I worked with was involved with MTV, and they reached out to him and said, "We need some ideas." We pitched 2 ideas for a web series, which wasn't a thing back then, right? This is 2007. And Mark calls, and I said, "Hey, what happened?" He goes, "Oh, we made the short list." I said, "Great. How many ideas made the short list?" He said, 2. I said, "Well, we're one of them." He said, "No, you're both of them. They want to merge the 2 ideas together." And we did this really cool web series called Connected. And it went so well. We did 2 seasons of it, actually.
Wow.
And it was right before the market crashed, but it was a really fun experience, to work with MTV, to have a real budget to do some really cool things and really big crews. And it was just an awesome experience all around. And I think that's kind of what's ironic about all that is I was doing short form back then, and I'm doing short form again. So uh,
Yeah,
that
I
was
mean, you were like a pioneer of short form content back then, especially video, short form video content.
yeah, we really were. We were one of the only people doing it, and when we started, we standardized on it. So then we said, hey, short form is a thing. Let's just start promoting it. And so we went brand after brand after brand and just started doing short form content for them. And it's funny because back then short form was 4 minutes. Now you're lucky to do a 60-second, right?
Yeah, it's all like ADHD 15-second TikToks.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing though. Even those 15-second TikToks, my wife does a lot of video stuff on TikTok, and it'll take like 4 hours to put together a piece of content that's a fraction of that, like 30 seconds, 15 seconds.
Well, not anymore, Brian. That's the next venture. That's the venture I have now.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, so it's called Lucy Hub. It's actually an AI powered video production platform. So it combines AI plus human editors to accelerate professional edits. And when we first started, to your point, it was a 4.5 hour edit. Now it takes us less than 60 minutes to do, and we're just like scraping the surface. By this time next year, we'll probably be able to do it in half that time.
So tell me about how it works. Like, what do you guys do under the hood?
So when we first started, it was really how do we go from production to final as quickly as possible, and it was AI based, meaning machine learning, computer vision, all of that. Not chat wasn't even a thing when we first started the company 2 years ago, and the idea was to implement workflows and processes that are AI centric to accelerate the things that an assistant editor would do. Right. So one of the most time consuming parts of all this is going through a bunch of footage and finding the really good footage, right? So we have AI do that, for example. And then we said, well, one of the surprises was we optimized the workflow so well. We built a custom cloud that optimized workflow, believe it or not, saved us a ton of time. Like today, if you want to send content to some, another location, you've got to upload it on Box or Google or one of these tools. They've got to download it. They've got to work on it. They've got to upload it back. So we built our own custom cloud that takes care of all of that. So as soon as it hits our cloud, it hits an editor's desktop and they can start working on it. And so the approach we took, there's two models, there's three models. And well, before us, there was two models. Now there's three. You had professional production. So your wife could go to a professional production company, send everything over. They could even film it and all of that, right? It's really expensive and it's time consuming. Or there's DIY, which might be what she's doing.
That's what she does, yeah.
DIY tool. So we looked at all of this and we said, well, you're not saying, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention, but laziness is the father. We talked to a lot of people who said, we don't mind filming. We just don't want to do the editing. So we built a cloud that's really a managed service. It's not designed to be a DIY tool. And there's a ton of them out there, but this is really designed to build a company that could do things at speed and scale. So our goal is quality at speed and scale. And so once we implemented the workflow, because we couldn't find a workflow that gave us the efficiencies we wanted, so we went and built it, right? That solved a lot of problems where, AI just makes it better and better. But even before we added the AI, that efficiency really saved us a bunch of time and was able to let us turn around content quickly. And we have several service level agreements. Our standard is 72 hours. We have clients that need content back in 2 hours and we can deliver it in 2 hours. So it's been a really interesting, I guess you could say experiment. But then chat came out and we're a Microsoft Founders Hub member. So we had access to OpenAI and all of that. And so we started playing with it internally and our internal team really embraced it. And so we were creating we have a bunch of micro training videos on our website on lucyhub.com where you can actually learn how to film on a phone. That's the other thing we do is we got rid of cameras and said, this thing will let you film everything. So, most of our clients film content on smartphones, upload them, and we take care of the rest. We do have agencies now and some production companies that are using proxy files and uploading them and using regular DSLRs. But I'd say 90% of the content we cut is being filmed on phones, and I think it's just gonna get more and more. So our team started using the OpenAI APIs to build internal tools for script writing, shot list creation, blogs, social media posts. We were literally using it for everything. And I said to the team, I said, guys, we need to productize this. Today we go from product to final. If we productize this piece of it, we can go from idea to final. So that's what we're rolling out this quarter is our Creative Copilot, which literally helps you take an idea, turn it into a script, a shot list, an AI powered voiceover, push it into the production cloud, film your content, and we'll take it to the finish line.
That's amazing. So is the product like all AI driven, or is there like human product ops behind the scenes?
The front end, the Copilot is all AI driven, right? So you could basically say, I want to create a script and promote my podcast. And the other thing is you don't need to know any prompting, right? You just put in natural language. You just put in keywords that you want the script to create. We do all the prompting. We create the script, and then everyone says, well, great, I've got a script, but no one's really a filmmaker on the marketing side. So we say, okay, there's a button that converts that script into a shot list, and we give you explanations of how to do the shot. So now you've got a blueprint on how to tell that story visually. And then we've got a bunch of other tools on there that you can use. So we're truly a hybrid platform because you can do a bunch of the pre-production work yourself and then go film your content, and then we'll finish everything for you.
That's amazing. The part where you finish the content, is that also AI driven, or is that human product ops?
It's human.
Okay.
It's human editors. Now we leverage a ton of AI tools to accelerate it, but at the end of the day, I always say, design and what we do is subjective, and subjective is always going to need a human touch. So, there's a lot of hype around AI replacing editors and filmmakers and all of this stuff, and I think it's going to accelerate things, but I just don't think. I think our who we are as people is, you're not going to let technology tell you what looks great.
I tend to agree with you on that. And I do think these kind of like hybrid, I'm guessing your product experience is probably, from a customer standpoint, it just feels like you're interacting with a software tool through the whole process. And then you have, human editors that are doing some of the work and then delivering the end result to the customer.
That's exactly right.
I think that's a really, I think that's the future of a lot of these SaaS companies, because everyone's, all the product categories that can be fully automated, I think have already been done. It's hard to do things new that, haven't been done before, and, kind of taking human component, integrating humans into your product experience, but delivering it as a SaaS product. I've seen a lot of businesses do some really cool things.
So that's really the model, and it's designed that way. And you've got an agency. We actually do a lot of work with agencies now. We launched our white label about 2 months ago, and I think we're in 10 POCs right now with agencies who need a more efficient way to deliver content. And this company started because I was having a conversation with an agency executive who said we spend thousands, tens of thousands on video content. By the time we get it back, it's irrelevant. So if you actually look at the way video is being consumed today, it's not like it was 3 or 4 years ago where a brand could go ahead and spend a bunch of money, create this really beautiful 60-second piece, do a handful of cut downs, and then reuse them throughout the year, which is what we all did. Now you're lucky if your video gets, has a shelf life of a week or two. So you've got a ton of consumption, and the traditional agency and production model just doesn't support it. So we've created a different way to do it. And, agencies and production companies love working with us now because we're just another tool set that they have to provide a set of videos that they're going to have to create for a client. We're never going to be the guys who, create that award-winning commercial that you're going to win that Cannes Lion Award for. But we take care of all the stuff that the clients want that, the creatives probably don't want to spend their time on.
So how, I'm assuming mostly this is social content, like TikTok, Instagram Reels, stuff like that.
It started out as event content. We actually started out in weddings, and it was interesting. And then we did, we're based in Vegas, so we were hired by an agency to do some work for 2 clients at CES who needed content turned around before the press announced their products. So we did a couple of quick turns, and it was just a much better market for us. So we really focus on the enterprise. We started out in events. We get used for a lot of social content, but now we're being used for learning and development, for
interesting
videos, for all types of videos. So it's really grown into a lot more. And we do long form now too. So we have YouTubers using us now. We have the brands doing the equivalent of a mini documentary on things, right? So we're basically now a modern day, I guess you could say, production SaaS business. And we work with enterprises, but we really like working with agencies and production companies because we can help them really scale and be more profitable.
Oh, that's awesome. I've always been so interested in, this like recipe for going viral. It's so, like, to me, it feels so elusive to figure out how to create, content that's like just explosively viral. Especially in podcasts, it's like a long haul slog to, just get subscribers and then they become loyal subscribers. But like on TikTok, some people can just post a video that with no following and reach, 5 million people overnight. And there's like some science and art and strategy behind how to do it. And I'm curious, do you have thoughts or experience
I
around that?
don't. We know how to create the videos, but marketing them and getting them out is a whole nother thing. I think back in the day when I was doing this, we always talked about you need to have some sort of shock value to it, or it was always either humor or some sort of shock value that got that viral effect. But I just don't know anymore. I mean, look, outside of my professional life as an entrepreneur and a software guy, I'm a professional musician. I play the drums. And so I was saying, well, how could I get my Instagram page? I've got this Instagram page for my music, at.drums. And how could I get that to get more followers? Well, I'm a big Rush fan. So I looked at audiences that Rush really related with, and one of them is in Brazil. And so Brazil is a big place for Rush. And so I did the Tom Sawyer drum solo with an overhead cam, and I promoted it. I did like a $20 boost in Brazil, and like the next morning I wake up and there's 48,000 views on this video. I was like, wow. But I have no idea. Like, that's the part, that's the magic piece of this thing that I haven't figured out. And the guys who figured it out, good for them. But I'm still, we just know how to build the content that our clients want, and we let the agencies do the rest of the work.
They have the strategy. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's I think, with LinkedIn and LinkedIn and Twitter or X, it makes a little bit more sense, to me and how it works. But TikTok, it's so weird. There's all these kind of like flavors of the month where people ride these certain specific trends, where if you use like, the backing sound that is, in favor that month, or, if you create
trending
videos.
Music. Yeah, trending music is a big one, right? I always tell my musician friends, if you want to get more followers, don't just focus on the originals. Just do a couple of covers that are popular at that time, and you'll get more followers that way.
Yeah, let's talk about music, because we're both musicians, and you combine. So I play music for fun outside of business, and you actually combine the two. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I play music outside of this, but I'm about to launch a podcast called Makers and Jam that's actually combining. I mean, you should be on it. It's about guys like you and me who have this one life, but can do the other thing, right? And so we talk business, and then we jam. And if you're not a musician, we do live band karaoke, or we'll kind of do a contest with you and things like that. But the whole idea for me was like, how do I combine these two lives I've had for so long into one?
Yeah, count me in. I'll definitely do it.
Yeah, next time you're in Vegas, drop in. That's the other cool thing about being in Vegas. A lot of people drop in, like, and guys like you who are either musicians or just really, like, we had the head of HR from a financial services firm who was in town for the Pearl Jam concert. We brought her in, asked her a bunch of questions about HR and after COVID and these distributed work environments and hybrid work environments, and then we kind of challenged her to a 90s music contest to see how well she knew her music. So, it's a lot of fun. So we should have you on it.
Yeah, I told you I sing in an Alice in Chains tribute band, so that 90s music will be right up my alley then.
I think it'd be great. Yeah, and we actually have a house band, right? So that's part of why I do it. Is I'm like, I wonder if we'll actually get some gigs out of this. We have the house band, and we'll do little jokes and things like that.
When's that podcast coming out?
Later this month. So we just finished shooting the 4th episode, and I wanted to have a kind of a funnel for it so I could start doing more. So we'll probably launch it in the next 2 weeks.
Do you have a plug, like a link or somewhere we can put in the show
Only on
notes?
Instagram right now. The YouTube link isn't set up, but on Instagram it's Makers N Jam.
Letter N, Makers Letter N Jam.
And Jam, yeah, and
Yeah.
that's already up, and we just ran our first teaser on there and a little behind the scenes when we were setting up the gear. So I've got this studio that was really for rehearsals and recording, and now it's a podcast studio. So it's got 6 cameras and a couch, and it's pretty funny.
That's awesome. I want to take a quick break from the episode and say, if you're enjoying this content, the best way you can say thank you is to subscribe. So if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you're on one of the podcast platforms, hit the subscribe button there as well. And also share it out to your friends and colleagues. If you find this content useful and you think other people will enjoy it as well, please send it out. And back to the episode. Well, let's go back to Lucy Hub. I'm still, I still want to kind of break that down a little bit more. So,
Sure.
you've got, kind of like the production side of the business, a little bit more of an agency model, but sort of SaaSified originally. Now you're moving more into a SaaS where you're helping people with the creative side of script writing and, getting the content ready for production. Where do you think this business could go in the future, especially with AI tools? Where do you think this goes?
So I think where I would like for it to go is I think it could be I think it could be a next gen managed service company. I came from the tech services world. I worked for IBM Global Services. I worked for Cognizant. I worked for Frog Design. It's always been about how do you make services more profitable. And historically, services has been linear, right? You add another headcount, you make more money. You add another headcount, you make more money. If you look at our model with a traditional service model, we can do 5 times in revenue what a traditional service company can do with one person. And that's the efficiencies of AI, right? We have a subscription model. So you're not paying for a consultant, you're paying for a subscription model that gets you a number of deliverables, whether it's a long form, short form video, certain number of revisions, right? Scripts, shot list. And so if you look at our model and compare it to the traditional consulting model, we have efficiencies of about 5x. And we can deliver a lot faster, right? So if you said to me, Amer, I'm going to be giving a presentation on stage and I need my video back within 2 hours, we can deliver that.
Wow.
Premium for it, but we can do it. So what I'm trying to do is position us as kind of this next gen managed service that's really leveraging the power of AI. And I don't think AI is going to take away a ton of jobs. I think it's just going to make a lot of people a lot more efficient.
Especially not for what you're doing. I don't think so. I think you're kind of leaning into the parts where it makes sense, and then you're still like adding the human touch where it makes sense. So I think you're well positioned for the AI future. It's interesting. Like your business model reminds me a little bit of Rev. I'm sure you know Rev, the transcription company.
Yeah.
So they kind of have the same thing. It's like a SaaS platform, like, online ordering experience where you upload your file, they transcribe them, they have humans. They actually have some platform I've heard where they actually take your file and they break it up into a bunch of small pieces. And then like 50 or 100 people will do like 30-second chunks, and then it gets all reassembled by their software. So it's like they can do it really fast because they just sprinkle it out to a bunch of people really fast. But I don't know how that business survives. Like with AI, I mean that, AI transcription is just, it's basically as good as human transcription at this point.
That's the interesting thing for me. That there are certain industries and businesses I think are going to take a hit, and I think the media industry for sure is going to take some level of a hit.
The what industry?
The media industry, right?
Media, yeah.
But I don't think you can stop innovation and the progress. I think you're gonna have to figure out how to work with it, right? And that's what we're trying to do. We're saying, hey, how do we do this? And we're not eliminating people by any means. We're actually just accelerating the work and being able to do more with less. And I think what's cool about being a startup in this day and age is AI is woven into the fabric and into the DNA of this business, right? We started AI at our core, and so we embrace all of this. My favorite is like, well, Sora is going to put you out of business. Sora is actually on our roadmap, right? It's going to be the way we're going to be creating all of the stock footage for our clients, right? So I'm not worried about Sora. I mean, iStock might be, but I'm not, right? And I think it's just, that's the other challenge is there's so much noise around this. There's so much misinformation around this. That's one of the big problems is social media. They're pushing these things, these stories out about how AI does this and that. And when you actually dig under the hood, you realize that that's just a marketing piece. none of that really works the way it's supposed to, right? And so that's one of the biggest problems we deal with. We keep being told that AI is going to put us out of business, and I'm like, I don't think so.
I mean, the media industry in general has been, changing quite a bit over the last 2 decades, especially like traditional media. Obviously newspapers and magazines are definitely on their way out at this point, but they've been getting chipped away at for a long time. And then just even like TV and like traditional media has been musicians, like the traditional model of music is kind of dead.
Yeah.
But it's stuff like what you're doing is like, there's a new wave every time. Like, first it was the internet, and then Napster kind of like started it. And then, there's like streaming platforms that come out like Spotify's, Netflix, Hulu's, that sort of thing. And then, everything, social media kind of democratized media creation. And now like everybody's a media creator now, anybody that wants to be. So you're kind of enabling.
I think our platform to some extent will democratize professional production, right? We have some major brands who are working with us exclusively on some of the things they're doing, and they really enjoy being the filmmakers on it, right? They're not bringing in production teams to do the front end. They're just doing it with us. And what they're realizing is they can bring in production teams, still leverage us, get better quality, and still have real efficiencies on the pricing and the delivery.
The editing, yeah.
I'm really enjoying working with the production companies, because we're giving the production companies a way to be way more efficient and way more profitable and get the deals that they're losing right now because brands just won't pay the money they used to pay for video.
It makes sense when you're a production company and you have like actors and talent that can be on the screen. But how do brands do it that are like marketing departments that maybe the people in the marketing department aren't super camera centric, or they're not like charismatic on the camera? How do you handle, like, do they bring people in for that? Or
so some of them bring people in, some of them just do it themselves, and we I'll tell you what's really, really interesting is the studies on lo-fi and hi-fi content. For what, I guess maybe because there's a level of authenticity, but lo-fi content seems to be converting more.
Can you describe the difference between lo-fi and hi-fi content?
I mean, so you and I do a little skit and we use this phone and we create the content, and it's not beautiful. It's raw, right? It's real, but it's still cut together reasonably well, and it tells the story. It just does it more humanly, right? Than it does more beautifully, right? It's not this gorgeous, beautiful spot that people are going to be like, wow, this is great. Like, oh, these guys are funny and there's a funny storyline here, and they did it themselves. So we have a handful of brands that are doing these little segments, these short form segments where they're creating skits. They're literally using our platform to create these skits. And one of them launched their new intranet. Their corporate comms team launched their new intranet, doing a series of 2-minute videos that they basically created a story around. Another one of them launched their new product and their new pricing model, doing a series of skits. I mean, it's lo-fi. It looks cool. We did all the post work, so we were able to stitch together a beautiful story. The content, but you could tell it was shot on phones. You could tell that these guys weren't pros, but it was still a good story, right?
That's pretty cool. So let's say like, a brand, a marketing department that wants to put out, 2 pieces of content a week, and, they're doing their own acting, and they can get the shooting down to maybe like 30 minutes to an hour per piece. Like what's their, so let's say they're spending 2-3 hours a week on shooting. What's their total investment of time besides that, and what's their cost investment to leverage your platform?
So the ones that are doing a really good job are making an investment in pre-production, right? And proper prior planning prevents poor performance, right? So they're actually taking the time to create the script and review it, and then do the filming. I think it really varies. And we have one group, she literally just puts up a camera, does the talking, gives us some notes on B-roll she wants added, and she's done, right? So she can get a bunch of content done in probably 2 hours a month. Then we have these other brands that, have their stakeholders. Each team has to sign off on things, and they might invest, a few weeks in a project, but if they did it traditionally, it would probably be a few months. And the really cool thing that we're seeing with some of our international clients is we have one client, they spun up 10 videos in a day. They were opening up a new facility. They needed to hire. they created 10 recruiting videos in 2 weeks with us. And so they basically, we have this little QR code you could use to scan and upload content. So they created a brief. They asked the 10 different employees to answer some questions, set up their phones. They had their conversations, uploaded it, and then we cut that together with B-roll and told some really good employee stories. And from start to finish was 2 weeks.
Wow, that's awesome. What does something like that cost to use your platform?
We have video subscriptions, but at the end of the day, we're in the hundreds of dollars for videos, not thousands. And you're getting a professional delivery. Now we're at hundreds because it's a hybrid, right? Whoever's in your organization's filming content, and we're doing the back end piece of it. But that cloud has a lot of benefits to it, because historically, if you wanted to do all this again, you'd have to figure out how do I collect content from, let's say, 10 different employees, right? And then how do I aggregate that? And then how do I go through it? And then how do I get it to an editor? Our cloud does everything. So you literally, we have one client, they have a really great use case. They crowdsource answers from the company. So they'll send a brief out and say, hey, tell us in 30 seconds how you're saving customers from leaving, or how you're retaining customers, or how are you getting these deals closed, right? So they're asking these questions at a global level from their organization, getting the responses, right? It all comes into our cloud in one project. They go in and they select the ones they want to use. And basically there's some tools that let our editors know those are the selects. And then we cut it together based on their edit scheduling. So it's really streamlined that piece of it. And I think it's just as powerful, if not more powerful, as a video aggregation and collaboration tool as it is an editing tool, right? And that's one of the places that we've really got efficiencies over everybody else. And then once your project is done, we've got another piece of the platform where you can literally share the link with the stakeholders. They can all collaborate on the video at the same time and then send it in for revisions.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm sure you've heard this before, just based on your business strategy. But when you're building a tech company, if you can make something 10 times faster, better, or cheaper, you have a business. And you're doing at least two, maybe all three of those things.
I think for the first time in my career, I'm doing all three of those things. And the problem is most people don't believe it. So, we were doing our first round last year, and we had an investor who called me and he said, when you told me about the pricing model and the cost structure and the profit and all that, because I just didn't believe you, because I don't think it could be done. I think because I dug into your financials and I realized, oh no, you really are doing this. You're really doing what you told us you were doing. So I think it's hard for people to understand that now you can get all three. It took this whole innovation of an industry around AI to be able to do it, but now you can.
What do you think is going to happen to all these video production agencies that, like I've called video production agencies before to make, some content, and I'll say, yeah, we need like a 2-minute video and I'll get a quote for $8,000 or something. What do you think is going to happen to all these video production agencies?
I think they're either going to have to find a way to leverage technology to be more efficient, or they're just not going to get business anymore. I mean, it's the reality of it is, when I had my production company, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was harder to do this. So you could justify charging a lot more for it. But the tech is really democratizing a lot of this, right? And so we talked to an agency last week in LA who said our client is willing to pay us 1/10 of what they used to pay us 2 years ago to do these videos. And we stopped doing them because it just didn't make sense. But with your platform, it makes sense now. We can be profitable doing them. So I think that's, they're either going to have to lean into something, whether it's us or someone else or some other tool that they bring in internally, or I think they're going to get left behind.
And are they still using $20,000 DSLRs to shoot their content, or are they just doing it on iPhones at this point?
No, they are. In fact, I've got a friend who runs a production company, and he was dead set against using phones. And I just saw his latest production; it was on iPhones, and I started laughing. I'm like, "Oh, you finally came on board, right?" I'll tell you the other challenge is, and it's not the production companies; it's the brands. They're not going to pay you $20,000 if you show up with a crew and phones, right? So you kind of have to show up with gear. I'll tell you a funny story on when we decided to pivot to phones. We were filming a wedding in San Antonio, Texas. And the night before, we're sitting in the tequila bar going, I'm like, you know what, guys? These phones do everything. Let's let's film this entire wedding on phones and not tell the bride and groom, right? And
Did you
so
still carry the DSLRs with
we
you?
still carry the camera. We had one person carry the DSLR. It wasn't even turned on. She was just moving around with it. And I said, look, do this for 20 minutes and then put the camera down and film, because no one's going to remember after 20 minutes. So we literally created this environment where they thought there was this professional videographer moving around with this DSLR rig. 3 of us were walking around with iPhones. She put that down and started filming with iPhones. And the funniest part of all that was the photographer came up to me and she said, I love your use of mixed media. You've got this DSLR here and these guys filming on phones. And I thought if she only knew that DSLR was turned off. The content was beautiful, Brian, and we learned so many lessons, right? We didn't have to stop and switch lenses. We didn't have to swap batteries out. We were able to capture shots that a DSLR package would never capture. So there was this little tiny window, and the bride and groom was on the other side doing the photo shoot. And I'll remember Mark just stuck the phone right through this window. I mean, you could never fit a DSLR package. He just stuck his hand right through this window, got the most beautiful shot of the entire night. And then at the end of the night, they threw the veil up, and one of my other videographers grabbed his phone and just put his hand down and got this beautiful shot going up. Like, those are shots you would have never been able to get with a DSLR rig, right?
Did you tell them at the end it was iPhone shots?
To this day, they don't know it was an iPhone shot video.
Hopefully they don't hear this podcast.
No, you know what? They're not going to care. I think they're going to be like, wow, this was amazing, right? Because they would have never got the best 2 shots of the night would have never happened with a DSLR rig.
Yeah.
Right? And the production value was there. It was a 4K shoot. But then some other things we learned, we were using these gimbals that have these telescopes on them, right? Well, you literally telescope it, put your arm up, and you'll get the equivalent of this beautiful jib shot or a crane shot or a drone shot, which we didn't need. These beautiful overhead shots during the ceremony. So a lot of lessons learned. And I remember we went back that week and I said, guys, let's just optimize this platform for mobile content, because most of our customers are going to be using that anyway. And then we can basically figure out how to deal with DSLRs using proxy files, which is what we did. So we can handle both. But if you look at most of the customers we have, most of the work that's coming in, it's mobile phone.
Yeah, yeah, 90% doesn't surprise me at all. It sounds exactly on point for what I would expect there. It's so interesting, it's like every decade or so, it's just like, I think, since the internet, essentially, it's, things just move so fast now, and the way that people are doing business and the way that, marketing and sales and, just the way that business moves forward, it just keeps evolving so rapidly.
And it's had to make our production team or our engineering team evolve. Everyone does the agile framework and all of that, but we've had to even put our own twist on it. We used to have 2-week releases. Now I think we do releases like every 3 or 4 days. We've got a release coming out because things are moving so fast on the AI side of the business.
Yeah, it's cool. What was your digital agency doing when you had that agency that you sold during the pandemic?
So I used to work for Frog Design, and Frog did some really cool, innovative things. And I thought, wow, if you could apply some of this stuff to the startup world, because you couldn't afford most startups wouldn't be able to afford Frog or IDEO. So I went and created this company called Potential to Kinetic, and the idea was that we broke down the product development and launch cycle to 5 stages or 5 labs. And so we had this process where you'd come to us with an idea, and we'd say, okay, this is phase 1 of 5. If you can pay for this phase, and then that'll decide if you get to the next phase and the next phase and the next phase. And so we really helped companies launch, startups launch. And, out of all the ones we launched, most of them, unfortunately, don't make it because of capital and other requirements. But a couple of them have, and one of them sold, and I think another one will sell eventually too. And then one of our clients did a NASDAQ uplift and needed, we were doing everything from product development to their sales ops work to their marketing. He's like, well, just bought the company. So,
wow. So that was kind of like more marketing and go to market.
Yeah, it was. Well, no, it was a product development team too. We really focused on software companies. We didn't do a whole lot outside of software. But we had these labs, and each lab had kind of an expert. So we had a software team, and we had ahead of that, we actually had a Salesforce practice. So when we deployed you had this whole Salesforce infrastructure that you launched on. So hopefully be a little more successful than most at getting to market. And then we had, so we had sales ops, and then we had some marketing stuff that we did with you. But there was a head to each lab that had that specialty. So it wasn't like we were trying to do everything with the same people. And it worked fairly well. And then we had a couple of large customers where we just filled gaps for them. We had a large gaming company we created an ERP or a CRM tool for that was really, really cool, where you could actually track what the salespeople were pitching on their pitches. And you got these really great reports at the end of a presentation to a client that told the marketing team and the sales leaders exactly what that person pitched, how much time they spent on it, and what the follow-ups were.
Can you talk about the exit at all, or is that?
I can talk about it a little bit. Basically, it was a company that was in the clean energy space, and they did a NASDAQ uplift, and being a public company is really, really hard. And so they were a client. We were doing a ton of work for them, and it was a great way for them to just have an entire team overnight that was already familiar with the product. So I went from running this agency to being the CRO and president of an energy division.
Wow.
Which is now in the Bitcoin space. But it was a good experience all the way around, and just a really great learning experience for me to go from not only just be the acquisition, but being I've always gone to larger startups that were already public. This one did a NASDAQ uplift, which in itself is a feat. It's a really hard thing to do. And you've got to maintain your stock price above $5 and all kinds of things. So it was a really interesting and a great experience for me just to go through all of that. It was yet another thing to learn and have experience with. So,
did they pay you in cash or stock?
It was both. It was cash and stock, and we did a really good job of getting the stock price up. And now they're a Bitcoin mining company. Actually,
wow.
We were trying to figure out how to apply our clean energy tools to some of the hardest energy problems in the country, and Bitcoin was one of them. Bitcoin stuff did so well, they sold the energy business and just went into Bitcoin mining, and they're doing great now.
Well, we're back in. Looks like looks like crypto winter is over, and crypto is back on the move again.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I enjoyed it, but I realized, I'm more of an entrepreneur than I am an operator. And so I left and started another company.
Well, before we were recording, we were talking about, the disease that you have to be an entrepreneur, but especially a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd recommend it to anybody, Brian. I think it's it's always your baby and you're always all in, and sometimes you shouldn't be. I think in this case, we have a really cool product, but there's products I should have walked away from, years before they collapsed. And I just didn't. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I learned is at some point you need to learn to walk away. At some point, it just doesn't make sense.
I was talking to a group of young people in their early 20s and, late teens a couple months ago. And, the moderator was like, all right, Brian, what inspirational things do you have to say for people who want to be entrepreneurs in the future? And I was like, well, it's probably not the answer that you want to hear from me, but I'll tell you that, most of you probably shouldn't be entrepreneurs. Most of you will probably be much happier in life just pursuing something that you like to work on and working at a company that can give you that role. But for those of you that want to be an entrepreneur, some percentage of you will make it, the rest of you won't. And, the ones who make it are going to be, working a lot of hours, really hard hours, lots of ups and downs, and you have to love that roller coaster. You have to feed on the energy of that roller coaster to be successful and to be sane, quite frankly.
But I agree 100% with you. Same thing. I actually think there's too much misinformation on social media about what entrepreneurship is. I think a lot of people who don't really know what it is get up there and rah about it, and they're just giving misinformation to people. I have one of our lead investors, great guy. He said, Amer, if you're not having 3 mood swings a day, you're not a true entrepreneur. And and every time it happens, I'm like, you have this great win and all of a sudden you get blindsided by something. I'm like, oh, Chris is right. But I was on a panel last year, and same thing. I said, I asked people, how many of you are here because you think you're going to start a company and make a lot of money, right? And a bunch of them raised their hands, and I said, you're better off going to get a sales job. You'll be happier, and you'll be more successful selling if money is the number one reason you're here. And people don't know the realities of it. Like, it's hard, I mean, I've taken a lot of hits, I've taken a lot of losses, and getting knocked down and getting back up is just a tough thing to do. And it's not for everybody at all. In fact, it's not for most people.
Yeah, and I think you hit a nuance there that is interesting. Like, obviously, entrepreneurs are typically the richest people. If you look at the Forbes list, or if you look at just the people in your town that have the most wealth, it's usually entrepreneurs. But if you go into entrepreneurship with money being your primary goal, not because you just have like an obsession to build, but the obsession to build is what makes you successful. If you go in with like, I want to be rich as the primary goal, I think often you're going to find that you can't, you don't have enough like, what's the word? Like internal motivations, or you don't have it.
You just don't have the drive, because it's a lot. I could have stayed in corporate America. I had a really lucrative career there, and I would have been, financially, I would have probably been way better off, right? But it's just not fun for me. This is fun for me building. I mean, I still have the first little sketch of what Lucy Hub was going to be, and what the idea of this production cloud was going to be. And that's the goal I'm trying to take. That's what I'm trying to bring to life. That's the idea I want out there, right? And it's not about the money. It's about this really cool idea that if it works, it'll bring a bunch of money with it. But I want to bring this thing to life. That's what I'm in here doing.
That's such a fun time in a company, man. I love the first part, like buying the domain and like, doing the first sketches, writing the first lines of code, and, getting like the first, like birthing the first part of the company.
Well, I miss working with the engineering team. Not today, my job today is way different. I spend my entire day, I'm either talking to investors or I'm talking to potential customers. Like that's all I do today. And I really miss talking to the engineering team and being part of the product roadmap. And so, I try to take at least an hour a week and catch up with that team and just see what they're doing. But for me, that's the fun. The fun is, hey guys, I mean, one of the coolest part of the IP, it's me and our initial two architects came up with, right? And it was just this really creative way to implement something that nobody had really thought about. And we're like, hey, what if we did it this way? And bam, it was like a big game changer for us. But that was the fun. Now I think the fun I'm having is, okay, well, what's the pricing model look like? What's the customer fit? Where are we going to play? And one of the biggest things that really helped us was the white labeling. As soon as we rolled out white labeling, you're in the agency where we have major agencies saying, this is cool and it's going to solve a big problem for us, right? So,
I mean, you're in that middle slog. There's like that first year or so where you're like doing all the fun stuff, like building the guts of the company and the product, and then you get into that middle slog for however many years where it's like you're doing all this stuff. It does, it's working, but it doesn't feel like it's really working, and you're just like pitching and demoing and just building out teams, and it's just kind of like slowly just grinding along, and then eventually you just hit that inflection where it just like takes off like a rocket, and then it gets really fun again.
And I'm thinking that's where we might be now. I made a pretty tough decision to put the brakes on an audience we were going after because they just weren't converting, and we took a hit for a quarter financially and revenue wise, and investors didn't like it. But boy, the pipeline we have today is 10 times what it was, 3 months ago. So those decisions to pivot, I think, really made a difference. And I was talking to one of our lead investors, and he said, I don't think most people would have made that decision because it would have ruined the ramp, right? So we took a little bit of a hit, but we're going to take this hit and it's going to go up this way instead of just going up the way it was going.
Yeah, that's smart.
So we'll see.
Amer, what do you want to close on here? You want to do a plug for Lucy Hub and tell people how to get started using the product, or what would you plug here?
I mean, I think, if anybody's interested in getting quality content at speed and scale, just visit lucyhub.com and request a demo, and one of us will demo you, and then we'll go from there. The creative Copilot's going to get launched. We're actually going to be it's all going to be one platform. So we're probably going to be the only platform that has all these cool DIY tools plus a managed service behind it, right? Everybody else just has these cool DIY tools, and you're still stuck doing all the editing. Now you can do all the DIY stuff yourself, and then just push a button and let us do the rest of it.
For the listeners, link in the show notes. Check out Lucy Hub.
Yeah, appreciate it. And then Makers and Jam in about 3 weeks.
Yeah, man, I'm down. Let's do it.
Yeah, come on out. Come on out.
Cash flow? Did you clear your cash flow?